but we're going to look at their live and carcass specifications portion of USDA. And I kind of always put this on here because I think it's very important that we look at who can do this and how this all works. If you look at that, the definition, livestock and seed program throughout the meat grading and certification branch provides certification of beef carcasses for a number of marketing programs making claims concerning breed of cattle, carcass characteristics, or only carcass characteristics. And these characteristics go beyond the requirements for USDA grades. So most of the time, these programs, the cattle are actually graded just like they were before. The carcasses are actually graded. But there are other specifications that are utilized to maybe take this whole big group of cattle and pull out of there what this certification program would like to identify as something that they think is special or something that someone would pay maybe a premium for if it were defined. Well, there's a lot of different types of these that have been defined by different people. There are some that are just breed specific, so that they just really define it by they are a breed, such as certified Hereford or some of the other certified Texas Longhorn. We'll talk about some of these here in a minute. There are some that are breed specific and require some quality characteristics as well. And one of those, the big one that we'll talk most about and use them as an example, is certified Angus beef. And they have a specific requirement for the breed, and they have carcass requirements on the other side. There are some, mainly these are driven by the packers themselves, that say, you know, I don't really care whether they're black or red or white or purple or green, as long as the meat quality is at the level we'd like to have it. And so there are several programs that are non-breed specific at all. They don't really care what breed they are, but they do care about the carcass specifications on the other side. There is one program that's a name brand specification program, and we're very familiar with that one here in Texas. It's called Nolan Ryan Tender Aged Beef. And we're going to talk some more about process verified, because that's another set of certification programs that's driven through USDA Agriculture Marketing Service. So there's a good many of these. I talked a little bit about the fact that the first requirement that a lot of these people have made, or a lot of the people that have actually made these certification programs work, are live breed claims. As we talked about, there's some certification programs that deal with live animals or claiming breeds of cattle. And so there are really only 5, even though there's a number of those in each of the breed categories. Schedule GLA is the one that's a live animal specification for cattle claiming Angus influence. That's the big one. That's the one that there are most of the programs that are under that Schedule GLA, and we'll talk about it a little bit here in a minute. Schedule AHA is a live specification for cattle claiming Hereford influence, and there's a couple of those programs out there. Schedule GLTL is one for cattle claiming Texas Longhorn influence, and there's only one of those programs, but they have their own. Schedule GLW is another one. It's a live animal specification for cattle claiming Wagyu influence, which is a Japanese breed, or the black cattle out of Japan that tend to have a tremendous amount of marbling. And it also Schedule GLAK, which is a live animal specification for cattle claiming Akaushi influence, which are also some Japanese breeds, but they're the reds, and so they're a little different, and we'll talk about a little bit about each one of those. I said there were some that had no animal claims, or some that had some really different claims, and some of those that have been on the market lately have some of the claims that allow them to market into Europe and different places across the United States that are looking for cattle that have not been treated with any of the growth hormones or anything along those lines. And you may see something called NHTC in some of those non-hormone treated cattle. There's also a number of programs that have no live animal requirements at all. Again, those would be mainly driven by some of the packers. Well, if you look at Schedule GLA as just an example, and the reason I use them, and I will use certified Angus beef a lot through here, is not because I'm trying to promote their product or anything like that, but they were the first. And so they kind of set the stage for some of the things we're talking about. It says on there, the specifications set forth the requirements for live animal which qualify for certification in approved beef programs claiming Angus influence. There's two ways they can meet those requirements. One is genotypically. So if they have documentation, they have different programs that they are different ways they can do that, but it all gets down to whether you can trace the Angus influence through those cattle. And most of that means that you got to have a pedigree or some other documentation that shows that those parents of this carcass or an animal that's going to be a carcass that goes through the system are Angus. There's a few cattle that actually that qualify that way, but the largest number of them qualify through phenotypic relationships there. And if you notice on the slide, it says cattle eligible for certification in Angus influenced beef programs based on phenotype or appearance must be predominantly 51% black. Now, that doesn't truly say they're Angus, although the black gene is dominant. And so somewhere in those cattle's history, there were some Angus cattle somewhere in their ancestry that made them black as they go through. It does go through some specifications that they have to be solid black and all the things that go along with that. So you can read that and see what it really means. As the carcass is certified for Schedule GLA, the hide has to be still attached to the carcass prior to the time that someone looks at that and makes a determination whether it meets the requirements for Schedule GLA. So in the cooler, there's really no way to tell whether this carcass was Angus or whether it was not, and some other breed or characteristic, which would make it a different, maybe a different, or eligible for a different program or something like that, but it would not be Angus. If I was in the cooler, in the old days, we used to look up on the round, somewhere in this area, for a mark that said that was an A, which would determine that that there had been someone that had actually evaluated this animal, it met Schedule GLA, and would be then identified so that when it went to the grader, it was eligible for any of the Angus programs that that packer might be utilizing. Today, because we don't want that edible ink, that blue ink in this lean, we're actually putting the mark up on the hock joint right here, which is an area that's not eaten very much. So there would be blue ink up there that would tell the grader, hey, this one met the requirements for Angus, and now we've got to see whether he meets the requirements otherwise, as far as the carcass goes, to meet the requirements for any of those kind of programs. They'll go into the cooler for the next 36 to 48 hours. They'll be chilled. When they come out and are presented to a USDA, Agricultural Marketing Service grader, he will then know that that cattle met the the Schedule GLA for Angus influence, and if there are carcass specifications, he can apply those and be sure that they meet those, and then apply the appropriate stamp. If he does that and he says, okay, this packer wants me to identify those cattle that are certified Angus beef, and they meet the specifications, we'll talk about it in a minute, he would use these example schedule, or I've got an example of the schedules for USDA certified programs there, and he would use the stamp for Schedule G1. And I'll tell you what the specifications are on that here in just a minute. But you can see that there's a whole list of those. You can get online. You can actually see all those specifications by different companies and how they're utilized. If you look at some of those and you get online and you see, and there's 20 some odd pages of these that you can look through. I've got a slide up there where you can see in the middle of that certified Angus beef. And if you look down through there, their live animal requirements for scheduled GLA can be met either phenotypically or genotypically. They can be prime, they can be U.S. choice, they have to be A maturity, and we could talk about what that means. And also modest 0 or higher, so they're in the upper 2/3 of the choice grade. And I'll show you that here in a few minutes. They have a ribeye area of 10 to 16 square inches. Their carcass weight is less than 1,000 pounds. Their fat thickness is less than 1 inch on the outside. They're steers and heifers. They're practically free of capillary rupture in the ribeye. They also have free of dark cutters. They have a maximum hump height of less than 2 inches. And if they meet all those things and they were black on the outside, they'll identify those with that Schedule G1 that says they are certified Angus beef. Now, where it really gets confusing is different companies have a number of different programs. If you look on this slide, Creek's Own Farms has several different programs. Some of those are very similar to certified Angus beef. If you look at their premium black Angus beef program, schedule number G44, they have the same specifications for schedule GLA. They're prime and choice, modest 0 or higher marbling. They're just like, they don't have the specification for ribeye size or fat thickness or carcass weight as certified Angus beef, but almost exactly the same other than that. If you look next to that, they have a premium natural black Angus beef program that has the same specifications for live side, but they can have one, they have one for prime, full range of choice, full range of select, and if you look next to that one, there's a schedule G74 that's exactly the same, except it does say something that says NHTC, or non-hormone treated. So you can have all of those different products, all those different programs that are certified by USDA. So it does kind of complicate the matter in a way.